Hi, everyone. Welcome to Naturally Immune for Life. Thank you for being with me today. And I'm going to remind you the book is now out, and you're going to appreciate it more than me because I already do it, so I don't have to be sold. So there's that. But this week we are going to cover the rheumatic conditions and some new 2026 findings in new fecal microbiota transplant causing and reversing, and causing again and reversing again. In rheumatic conditions, and fibromyalgia is now one of those rheumatic conditions. So we're going to be talking about fibro and the others, and it is decoding fibromyalgia with a microbiota mouse transplant. Transplantation of healthy human microbiota reversed the pain, hypersensitivity, and pain conditions. Let me add that. Transplantation of healthy human microbiota reversed the pain, hypersensitivity in mice that had previously received microbiota from humans with fibromyalgia. The gut microbiome, an ecosystem shaping the host health. The gut microbiome, a diverse community of microorganisms residing in the gastrointestinal tract, is increasingly recognized as a key player in human health and disease. Its vast ecosystem not only aids in digestion and nutrient absorption, but also exerts profound influences on physiological systems outside the gastrointestinal tract, including the immune, endocrine, cardiovascular, and nervous system, to name a few. The role of the gut microbiome in various disorders has been increasingly recognized, typically following 4 conceptual research milestones: the establishment of an association between the composition of the gut microbiome and a given medical condition. And I'd like to remind you that I know, wait, let me get to this. Establishing a causal role for the gut microbiome in the disorder, deciphering the mechanisms allowing the gut microbiome to exert its pathophysiological effects, and harnessing the insights into the role of the gut microbiome in the disorder into diagnostic and therapeutic. Just a second. And therapeutic tools. So, on the diagnostic front, if you haven't been with me since my very first website, FibroSmart, way back in 2004, you would not be feeling like you were in Groundhog Day, but I actually do. So, we are going to cover fibromyalgia and other rheumatic conditions, which I'll list at the end. And if you knew this, you would know that there has been a very long time test out there that just simply measured urine, and it could tell that if you were dysbiotic, it could tell if you had H2S, and it could tell if you had immune dysfunction, and it could tell if you had toxic metal overload, toxic metals. So that test has been out there for a long time, and it has yet to be widely adopted, but if you watch this channel, you would know that I know that it exists. And very simple, non-invasive, cost pennies, and it can pretty much tell you everything you need to know. So, and this was This is just flotsam and jetsam in my long travels since 2004. So, and my first website was when I began to investigate these postmodern chronic pain fatigue epidemics that exploded in the 1980s. Fibromyalgia is a complex chronic pain syndrome characterized by widespread pain, fatigue, sleep disturbances, and cognitive difficulties. Although its precise cause remains uncertain, growing evidence points toward the gut microbiome. Studies have found that people with fibromyalgia have specific changes in their gut bacteria, including reductions in species involved in short-chain fatty acid and bile acid metabolism, and bacteria that influence immune function, and these differences appear to occur independently of diet. And we're talking about the adult diet here because we are talking about adult onset conditions usually, physical activity, medications, and other health conditions. And I used to say fibromyalgia was just the road to multi-organ failure and autoimmune conditions, multiple autoimmune conditions. So beyond correlation, the elusive path of causation. The most compelling evidence goes, and by the way, I did get quote unquote diagnosed with fibromyalgia, even though to date there is no test. But since this is moving into the category of rheumatic and dysbiotic conditions, as I just said, there has been a test out there for a very long time, and it simply had a reactive with urine, and you could, by the metabolites, you could determine if someone was everything I already said. The most compelling evidence goes beyond showing an association and begins to address causation. Gut microbiomes from women with fibromyalgia were transplanted into germ-free mice. Probably a human mouse model would have been better, but whatever. Within days following the transplantation, the mice developed pain hypersensitivity, which manifested as spontaneous pain and increased sensitivity to evoked pain. These changes were persistent and did not decay over several months. In contrast, fecal microbiome transplantation from healthy individuals did not produce similar changes in pain sensitization. Even more striking, transplantation of healthy human microbiota reversed the pain hypersensitivity in mice that had previously received microbiota from humans with fibromyalgia. So this is cause, reverse, cause, reverse, reverse, cause. These experiments demonstrate that the gut microbiome is not only altered in fibromyalgia, but plays a causal role in the syndrome. So, when I read this, my first thought was, are we going to have to do this 7,000 more times to get past the racketeers, which we already know it is already in production and going on the grocery store shelf in the HMO dairy section, 120-year-old grandma's secret formula. And when you get through with all that, you could probably wake me up because I really do not feel like going through these repeated cause, transfer, cause, reverse, transfer, cause, reverse. 7,000 more times. And in my opinion, I already know this is going on the store shelves. I already know it's in development for mass production, and I already am probably going to guess that it is for eventual fortification against SAM, severe acute malnutrition. Not because it's the right thing to do or the expedient thing to do, but mostly to protect the status quo. So, yes, Virginia, you can transfer literal starvation via a dysbiotic microbiome, even in your chubby little future, even in your chubby little child, which I see more and more of, and everybody sees more and more of. And all you have to do is walk in a classroom and you can perfectly detect what's going on. And it's not because of them, they're starving. And how do we know this? Because we've already discussed this. Pantothenic acid deficiencies, which are unheard of, except in the starving. So, and that's just one way we know this. We also know this from the father of the microbiome in twin studies. So it's not that we don't know it. It's not that we also don't know that this could be going on in someone who appears to be obese. Okay? So, I'm not one of those people that blames the obese for their condition. I just want to get that straight. I know the statistics. I know where this is probably coming from. Okay, so microbiome's pathophysiological role in fibromyalgia. How might the microbiome influence pain? The gut microbiome is closely connected with the immune and nervous systems through the gut-brain axis. In the mouse experiments, microbiota from people with fibromyalgia produced changes in circulating immune cells. In particular, I believe it was IgG was one of them, and activated microglia in regions of the brain involved in pain processing. The researchers also point to altered microbial metabolites as another possible mechanism. People with fibromyalgia show changes in circulating short-chain fatty acids and secondary bile acids, compounds produced or modified by gut bacteria that can influence immune signaling and pain pathways. In particular, changes in bacteria involved in bile acid metabolism have been associated with depletion of certain secondary bile acids that may have pain-reducing effects. This research raises an important possibility. Fibromyalgia may involve not only abnormal pain processing, but also disturbances in the microbial ecosystem that communicates with the immune and nervous systems. If specific microbial communities or their metabolites contribute to pain hypersensitivity, restoring a healthier microbial environment could eventually become part of a mechanism-based approach to treatment. Early clinical research is already exploring this possibility. The review reports that 2 open-label clinical trials found that FMT from healthy women was associated with decreased pain and overall symptom burden in people with fibromyalgia. Although these preliminary findings require confirmation in larger, well-controlled studies. Clinical applications of the gut microbiome in fibromyalgia. The implications extend beyond fibromyalgia. As the gut microbiome influences systems throughout the body, including immune, endocrine, cardiovascular, and nervous system function. Researchers increasingly view the microbiome through a progression from association to causation mechanisms and eventually therapeutic applications. And I'm going to tell you right now that's going to be a specific functional food first and then probably a fortification because of the major impact of the problem, which we also discussed last time. Cradle to grave healthcare is not going to happen. In fibromyalgia, the evidence is beginning to move beyond correlation toward experimental evidence that the microbiome itself can influence pain sensitivity. Future research will need to determine which bacteria, metabolites, immune pathways, and microbial interactions are most important, whether targeted dietary or microbiome-based interventions can produce lasting improvements. For now, the evidence provides a compelling new perspective on fibromyalgia. The gut may not simply reflect what is happening elsewhere in the body, but it may actively participate in the biology of chronic pain. So let me just move on here to the About page and reread to you the WHO statement. And I believe the first word covered is nutrients, absorption of nutrients, which when you have dysbiosis, that becomes increasingly impossible. And if you start out that way, it's not a good thing because it doesn't matter what your mother feeds you. Chances are you are not going to be able to utilize or use those nutrients. So, okay, malnutrition is the leading cause of death. Major protective critical factors are breastfeeding, food, and water security against malnutrition. Critical factors in the maturation of healthy gut microbiota. The first step in microbiota alteration associated with severe acute malnutrition. Later, the absence of healthy, mature anaerobic gut microbiota leads to deficient energy harvest, vitamin biosynthesis, and immune protection, and is associated with diarrhea, a whole host of other gut conditions, and malabsorption. So, okay, we are repeating ourselves again and again and again. Okay, so moving on to rheumatic diseases and the gut microbiota. Rheumatic diseases encompass a broad group of conditions affecting the joints, muscles, connective tissues, and immune system, including rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic arthritis, and fibromyalgia. Over the past decade, substantial evidence has emerged linking alterations in the gut microbiota known as dysbiosis with several rheumatic diseases. One notable example is the increased abundance of Prevotella, a gut bacterium associated with the onset of autoimmune disease in rheumatoid arthritis. And RA was one of the first ones and I believe the second was osteoarthritis. I believe both of those were involved in an FMT. So, okay. One proposed mechanism is the disruption of the intestinal barrier. Another proposed disruption is immune homeostasis, altering the balance between pro-inflammatory cells and anti-inflammatory regulatory T cells, TREGs. This imbalance has been implicated in several rheumatic conditions, including RA, AS, and SLE. Together, these findings support the concept of a gut-immune joint axis, in which changes within this intestinal microbiota influence immune activity that can affect distant tissues and organs. This expanding field has made the gut microbiota an increasingly attractive therapeutic target. An increasingly realistic therapeutic target. Okay, so you can read the rest of it yourself. I'm not going to read all of it, just to save a little time, and I am just going to go through the sources here with you. So remember, last week we covered the neurodegenerative diseases, and you might be interested. You might have seen one of the minerals, I believe it's a mineral, involved in Alzheimer's, lithium, I believe it's lithium orotate, also a well-prescribed medication for other brain, psychologically disturbed conditions. And if I am not mistaken, I believe it has something to do with the sequestering or the absorption of lithium. But I'm not gonna. And this came from Harvard. Everyone at Harvard takes lithium. At least everyone involved in that research. But it would be essentially an inability to utilize lithium correctly. So 2024, Decoding the Connection, Unraveling the Role of the Gut Microbiome in Fibromyalgia. July 2026, The Role of the Gut Microbiota in the Development of Rheumatic Diseases, a Focus on Fibromyalgia. 2026, Implications of the Gut Microbiome in Fibromyalgia, a Scoping Review. So again, I am not going to go over every 7,000 label on the planet. I am going to place these in their proper categories under the umbrella of dysbiosis, just like they are. And T-cell mediated, T-cell related, which again, I just showed this was another one involving TREGs. So, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to encourage identity medicine when that's not where it's going. It's moving to network medicine categories within a hub centering around the microbiome. And if you agree with that, that would be great, because that is where it is heading, not only to a doctor's office near you, but eventually, I'm sure, to the store shelves is the plan, bypassing drug completely, in development for mass production, and as I said, probably eventual fortification against malnutrition. And you learned it all here first, but only if you bought my previous book or if you buy this book. And I have to say, I'm probably thinking about, well, I'm not going to say my future plans regarding YouTube, but I'm probably not going to invest as much. I'm probably not going to invest in YouTube as much as I have been in the past. Put it that way. Okay, everyone. So you can wait until it gets in the store. It's in development. Hopefully, within a couple of years, it will be there as a functional food at least. But I am guessing fortification is probably at least 5 years away, if that is the plan, and I am guessing it is the plan. Just because of the scope of the worldwide problems. Okay, so that's this week's, and hopefully I will thank you again for your reviews. I know some of you are still reading, but I thank you so much again. I truly appreciate it because I am only one person and I cannot possibly get this out to the thousands upon millions and now billions. I just read it. The obesity epidemic is now well over 1 billion, coming from the Chinese, and they are quite worried about it. So they're probably just one more group that adopted the Western lifestyle habits and quit breastfeeding and started introducing more and more formula, as they are also doing in Africa. I'm sorry to say, even in the poorest regions who do not have clean water, probably could, how they can even afford it, I don't know, but somebody must be handing it out to them. But I'm sorry to say that formula feeding is increasing even in the poorest regions of Africa. And prior to this, they were the highest percentage on earth that was not formula feeding. So that's quite discouraging. So we really, 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 really need the help to educate people because, as I said, you can literally transfer starvation via a dysbiotic microbiome from in mouse studies, and and twin studies, and that is coming from the father of the microbiome, who was the pioneer in that frontier research many, many years ago. Okay, you have a great day and a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.